part of the reason NFL fans love watching the sport is the elite standard for performance in crunch time. It's the name of the game in the NFL.
Montana, touchdown, John Taylor!
Whether it's coaching or playing, there's something indescribably exciting about watching an individual rise to the occasion and deliver with the game on the line. The star quarterback leading the team down the field for a game-winning drive, the wide receiver leaping up in the back corner of the end zone for a game-sealing touchdown. You know the moments. Conversely, there's something equally jaw-dropping about a good old-fashioned choke job. And there have been a few guys over the years that have had more than their fair share of chokes. So, without further ado, let's take a look back at 10 of the biggest chokers in NFL history. The most obvious place to start is probably with now San Francisco 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan. After all, once you get your name tied to the calamity that was the 28-3 Super Bowl between the Atlanta Falcons and New England Patriots back in 2017, you simply need to be called out for it. We could have started with Matt Ryan because the then Atlanta Falcons quarterback certainly played a role in the team's epic collapse. But I think that the further we get from that Super Bowl and the more we watch the former Falcons offensive coordinator continually choke under pressure, it's only right that we put the blame on Coach Shanahan. I mean, think about it. He put on that putrid display of play calling in the second half of Super Bowl 51. The team was up by 25 points and absolutely had the game won. All they needed to do was milk the clock. But no. Shanahan chose to take a few unnecessary risks and breathe just enough life into the Patriots for them to snag the momentum and eventually the game. But for me, what really cements Shanahan as an all-time NFL joker is the fact that despite being one of the best coaches in the NFL over the past few years, he has repeatedly made questionable decisions down the stretch of games, including in his most recent trip to the Super Bowl, this time as the head coach of the Niners. His team was leading the Chiefs by 10 points in the fourth quarter, before proceeding to give up 3 touchdowns in 7 minutes to lose 31-20. The play calling was not as egregiously bad, but it was clear that he was pressing, and when you have a team down by 10 at that point in the game, you simply have to finish them off, especially with those sort of crunch time skeletons in your closet. Interestingly, Pete Carroll, the Seahawks head coach, who in his defense has actually won a Super Bowl, established himself as a choker in a similar way to Shanahan. While Shanahan refused to park the bus and run out the game, Carroll's refusal to run the ball was a more isolated but equally devastating incident. Seattle was up 24-10 heading into the fourth quarter of action, and though New England came storming back with 14 unanswered points to take a 28-24 lead, Seattle was still in many ways in the driver's seat. With Russell Wilson at the helm and 2 minutes left to move the ball down the field and score, you have to think that Seahawks fans were nervous, but feeling good about their chances. Even more so once Wilson started moving the offense down the field, and even more so when they got down to the 1-yard line with 26 seconds left in the game. It was in this moment that Pete Carroll forever changed his legacy by calling for a gimmicky pass play instead of handing the ball off to one of the league's most fearsome short-distance runners, Marshawn Lynch. And as Murphy's Law would have it, Wilson's pass was skillfully intercepted by Patriots defensive back Malcolm Butler, and the Patriots somehow stole the Super Bowl right back from Seattle, ruining their bid for back-to-back titles. Just a terrible look for Pete Carroll, who at the time was quickly climbing the ranks as one of the most widely respected coaches in the league. And not for nothing, but Seattle just has not been the same team since. Tony Romo is another guy that seemed to be chased by the choking demons throughout his entire NFL career. And you know what? If you saw his very first playoff game back in 2006 against the Seattle Seahawks, it's almost like he was destined for a career of choking. Romo had started the season as the backup to Drew Bledsoe. In fact, he didn't even attempt his first regular season pass until the middle of October, and he didn't end up getting named the starter until October 29th. I mention this because in those days, it was very common for the backup quarterback to also serve as the placeholder for the special teams unit, which was the case for Romo during his time behind Bledsoe. But rather than train someone else on it once Romo became the starter, the Cowboys decided to have their starting quarterback also serve as the placeholder, which is just about the most Dallas Cowboys thing that I think I've ever heard. This decision proved costly in their wildcard matchup with the Seahawks, when, with the Cowboys trailing 21-20 with 1 minute and 19 seconds left in the game, the special teams unit trotted out for a 19-yard field goal attempt. Romo somehow botched the hold, and though he recovered the ball, he was tackled short of the goal line, turning the ball over to Seattle and effectively costing Dallas the game. Romo is far from the only quarterback who is guilty of consistently coming up short in the big moments, which, hey, makes sense. They almost always have the ball in their hands when the game is on the line and the pressure's turned up. Take Matt Hasselbeck, for example. The "we'll take the ball and we're gonna score" game will live on forever in the lore of epic choke jobs. Hasselbeck was leading his team into overtime during a winner-go-home playoff game against Green Bay. And now, while I respect his confidence and the sort of chip on his shoulder he was playing with, maybe don't announce to the entire road stadium of fans, coaches, and players that you're going to score unless you are really sure that you're gonna score.
Gonna call.
I got it.
Matt's gonna call.
I got it.
I like to call heads.
Heads is called.
We want the ball, we're gonna score.
And you definitely can't then throw a game-stealing pick six.
Takes the snap, short drop, quick throw, left side,
Yes!
intercepted! Down the right sideline! It is out! Touchdown!
I can only imagine that Matty Boy still has nightmares about that game. And to be honest, we're not just talking about the Tony Romo, Matt Hasselbeck type. Donovan Mcnabb, for example, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league during the 2000s, but every time he had a chance to really take it to the next level, he squandered it. He and the Philadelphia Eagles made it to 4 NFC Championship games, and the one time that they made it over the hump to reach the Super Bowl in 2005, McNabb absolutely blew it. I mean, McNabb was literally caught puking on himself down the stretch of Super Bowl 39 when the Eagles were trying to snatch away a victory from the New England Patriots. When you lose a Super Bowl by 3 points and your quarterback is puking on himself down the stretch after throwing 3 interceptions no less, it's a real hurdle to try and convince yourself that the signal caller is not choking away the game. It's too bad too. McNabb had a great career, and the Super Bowl ring is honestly the only thing missing from what could have been a Hall of Fame resume, if only he didn't shrink in the big moments. Speaking of talented quarterbacks who shrunk in big moments, how about Dan Marino? Unlike McNabb, his resume is so undeniable that he was a surefire Hall of Famer even without the Super Bowl ring. At the time of his retirement, Marino held more than 40 NFL single-season and career passing records. And while many of them have since been surpassed, it is worth noting for context purposes, just so we can all remember how impressive he truly was. Especially considering the era he played in. Marino's stat lines were unheard of at the time, but man, would his legacy look different if he had captured that ring.
Come on, just let me win one Super Bowl.
You're much too nice a guy for me to want to do that to you, Mr. Marino.
You did it for Namath.
Yeah, but Joe was coming here anyways.
This sucks.
Or if he didn't put up such an abysmal performance during his lone Super Bowl appearance. Considering how impressive he was during the regular season, 29 of 50 for 318 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks is just not gonna move the needle. And it led to his Dolphins getting squashed by the San Francisco 49ers in the big game, 38-16. Certainly not what he or the fan base expected after a 14-2 regular season. But moving on from star quarterbacks that couldn't get the job done in the big moment, let's turn over to the kickers. And man, are there some doozies here. Let's get the worst and most obvious one out of the way here first. Everyone and their mother knows the Scott Norwood story. You know, his 47-yard field goal attempt that he pushed wide right and cost the Buffalo Bills a chance at Super Bowl glory. Although common sense dictates otherwise, it's hard not to feel like a choke job this epic isn't at least partially responsible for the 4 successive Super Bowls that the Bills ended up losing in, even if Norwood wasn't on the team for all of them. It's just hard to bounce back from that kind of disappointment. A kicker missing a big kick and never really bouncing back to his pre-choke form is actually a pretty common trend, to be honest. We've seen it time and time again over the years. There is Cody Parkey and his legendary double doink for the Bears in the 2018 playoffs, in which Parkey missed a game-winning 43-yard field goal attempt. And before any Parkey apologists want to start claiming it was tipped, zip it. No one wants to hear it. Especially considering 5 days after the miss, Parkey embarrassed the franchise and its fans even further by discussing it with the anchors of NBC's Today Show. Parkey has somehow bounced around the league in the time since, but he has never quite regained that pre-double doink form. But hey, good for Parkey to find a way to keep getting work though, because after Blair Walsh missed a chip-in field goal for the Seahawks to earn a bid to the postseason back in 2017, he never found his way back into a full-time role on an NFL roster again. And this is a former Pro Bowl kicker we're talking about, although he was a repeat offender, having choked away a gimme 27-yarder 2 years earlier that could have earned the Vikings their first playoff win in 6 seasons. On the subject of Pro Bowl kickers, there may be no greater offender than Mike Vanderjagt, especially when you consider how much pure kicking talent he actually had and wasted. After fighting his way up the ranks from the CFL to become an NFL Pro Bowler, then All-Pro, Vanderjagt's career came undone at the seams because he simply could not make an important kick to save his life. Perhaps most famously was the game-tying attempt in '06 for Indy against the Steelers, for which he allegedly attacked a middle schooler over after he made comments on his botched kick. He constantly put his foot in his mouth, making ridiculous comments in the media that eventually cost him his career. But who do you think is the worst choker in NFL history? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.